Okay, Cari, good morning. Welcome to our Devico Breakfast Bar. We've had a number of people from the industry come and talk to us about what's happening in their organization and what's happening in the industry in general. So I thought you could start maybe by tell us what is your role in your organization, but more importantly, tell us about your organization and what's happening right now.
Well, when I worked with Devico, I was with Planetly. I was at Planetly, I was the head of engineering and ultimately the VP of engineering. I was functionally the CTO. I did everything from IT to InfoSec to engineering itself at Planetly, which was an engineering team at our peak of around 70 people.
And tell us a bit about Planetly. Who are they? What do they do?
That was a carbon accounting software as a service solution. We helped companies calculate their carbon emissions so that they could then manage that and offset it and do reduction strategies and so forth.
And the role that you do there now, which you just described, tell us a bit about your journey to that role, right from I don't know, your very junior start, and as you do that, perhaps share with us what you thought your most important accomplishment has been to date on that journey.
Sure. So when I joined Planetly, they were mostly a consulting firm. They did all the carbon calculations on spreadsheets and would take a job, make a deal, and then do the calculations on spreadsheets, generate a report, not even generate a report, write a report, and then hand the report to the customer and exchange money and so forth. And that's what they were doing. And I came in and turned it from that into a software as a service solution. So we started by building a front end to collect data, and also then we made this better by providing integration strategies and also the ability to upload and your data from different data sources. That is also what I am the most proud of, is coming in November of 2020, I started working there. And then by March 2021, actually by mid-January 2021, we had what we were calling automated calculations working and live on the site. So within just a really few months, had transformed the company into a SaaS company. And that's when we started to really grow, and that's when I needed more people fast, and that's when I got in touch with Oleg, and we made Planetly's QA happen. He also supplemented our front end engineering because we were having a hard time hiring them. So that worked out really well for us.
Good. We'll come to that in your relationship with Devico and how that's worked, because I think that's interesting how it's linked into your deliverables. So I was thinking again about your role and your journey, and I wondered if you look back and you could share with us any kind of bizarre or funny situation that you encountered that you look back with, and I think, wow, that was a really interesting learning point for me on that journey.
Well, as I said, I used the past tense because we were acquired within about a year and a half of me, actually a year and a month of me starting working at this company. We caught the eye of OneTrust, which is a company that primarily does privacy, but they were branching into ESG, and they loved us. They did a lot of due diligence. I had a lot of interviews with them, worked with them. They believed in us out of something like 100 candidates that they were looking to acquire, and they made an offer that our founders couldn't refuse, and they bought us. Now, the sad part is that a year later, they decided to give up on ESG, and they just laid all of us off. So they closed Planetly down, including Oleg's team. What did I learn from that? Well, now I'm in my current role. I'm the founder and CTO of Techer, which is making software to help engineering leaders be at their best. This is not our official mission statement. I'm winging it, like I said. But I'm currently working on that by myself with one co-founder. So I'm the tech co-founder, and he's the business side co-founder.
Okay.
And lessons learned: if we get an acquisition offer, to make sure that my people are taken care of, and to make sure that we get it all in writing, get all the stuff in writing. So that was a big mistake from our founders, I think, and they know it.
But an exciting new role focus, and I'm sure some conversations with Oleg and the team about where you take that in the future. When you think about your profession and the sector you're in, give us one thing that you would say, I'm really passionate about this. This is what makes the difference in success in the environment I work in.
Scalability.
Okay,
So
scalability.
really, things have to work. They have to scale. They have to be maintainable. You have to be able to scale not only your code, not only your systems, but your teams. So you have to build your teams in a way that they can scale. You can't build software in a giant monolith very effectively. It starts out, it's great in the very beginning, but in the end, that is going to bite. So
Thinking about the industry, and I think a lot of people will listen in and know that it's a fast-moving environment, lots are, particularly in the sector we're in. How do you keep yourself up to date with the latest tech and developments?
well, I'm currently coding again, so I'm doing it. And that's, I guess, how I'm keeping up to date. And I'm actually pushing my boundaries quite a lot. I'm intentionally coding in frameworks I never knew before. So I'm learning something new in the process. Because doing what I did before would be boring, I guess. Also, this is newer. And what I was doing before was a little older. So I guess that's how I also read blogs and I read news sites and TechCrunch and things and see what people are putting out there. There's so much happening. Can't possibly keep up with all of it. There's also a community of CTOs, a couple of communities of CTOs that I am a member of that we ask questions of each other and I read that and I ask questions. And so we kind of help each other out.
And so the good knowledge sharing and
Yeah.
network. Can I ask you, how would you make choices about what computer language or development framework you would decide to use?
Couple of factors. Availability of resources, of course, is very important. It's very important to make sure that you can hire. Like Haskell's a great language, but it's really difficult to find engineers who are going to work on Haskell. And that's probably one of the main ones. But also you want something that is modern, something that's going to attract people who are passionate about their code, who are passionate about building good software. In my experience, some languages tend to be, this is what makes most money. So becoming maybe an SAP ABAP developer, great for business, not so great for passion. I don't think anyone's passionate about writing ABAP, but you can get some amazing, Vue.js or React engineers and Node engineers, and they're readily available. There are loads of them. So
Yeah.
that's one. The other is also just the compatibility of, for instance, your front end and back end. I said Node. Node is a great example because it's much easier to find full stack engineers that are doing front end and back end both in JavaScript. Whereas if your back end is in Python and your front end is in JavaScript, then you have this division between Python and JavaScript developers, and you have some people working on something and handing it over to others. In some cases, that's exactly what you have to do once you scale out to a certain level. So, for instance, especially in data science, machine learning, and so forth, Python is the language. You get them to set up their services. Then you can start doing that, but you have to get to a certain scale, I think, before that makes any sense. Early on, it's really hard to split a team of 4 engineers into 2 front end and 2 back end. Rather have 4 full stack in the very beginning.
And it's interesting, a few times you've talked about resources and the availability of skill sets and resources. Thinking about teams and as a CTO, what have you used as tools to help drive efficiency in your teams?
Well, mostly use spreadsheets. So that's in fact what we're doing at Techer. We're building tools for tech leaders. So that was the idea came out of my experience at Planetly. I did so many things on spreadsheets. I use sheets for everything, for organizing my people, for keeping track of my people. HR doesn't seem to understand that how you build software. The teams that are actually working on the software are different than the teams that they are reporting to that HR is considering. So, and also you want to treat your contractors and freelancers the same as everybody else on your team. Whereas HR does not see them the same. HR sees them differently. So how do you manage that? Well, pretty much every tech leader that I know puts together a bunch of spreadsheets and they manage it there. In addition, keeping track of all the things going on your teams, all the things that your people need, all the things that your people want, and their career frameworks, all of that stuff was just basically on spreadsheets for me. And that's why I'm building this app.
Well, you're in the right place to do the app, so that it sounds as though it's building on some good experience. Thinking about resources, we've talked about that a few times, but when you think about some of the skills that are required today and to help you now and in previous roles, what would you say are some of those primary skill sets that you've been looking for and look to seek out?
In engineers?
Yeah.
Well, of course, the ability to code. They have to be able to do the work. They have to understand why it works. It's very easy to go to Stack Overflow and copy paste some code and say, look, I did it. But understanding why it works, that's something that we have to do in an interview. Passion for what they're building. It's great to see people who love what they're doing. I'm not saying necessarily they have to do it 12 hours a day, but it's really nice to see when they have side interests, side projects, when you can see the passion in their face when they're talking about the work that they did, when it's cool, when it's exciting. But also they have to be able to communicate with each other. I don't care if you're the best engineer in the world. If you can't communicate with your teammates, if you don't respect them, if you're not a good team player, then you're not going to last on a team that is more than few people. You might be great for the first engineer when you're first starting out because you're an amazing engineer, but once we start having a team, it's really hard.
Yeah, that's a great shopping list, right, of things that you're looking for. Tell me, how difficult is it finding that type of profile?
It's not easy to find that. You just make sure you screen for that in the interview process. Teach your recruiter how to look for those things.
What would you advise to developers in the space around what they should look at to develop as skills and knowledge as they try to seek further opportunities?
To advise people. Don't just do what you're told. Explore what interests you. Do projects on the side. Do some open source projects.
And you've alluded a few times, I think, and previous people we've spoken with have talked a lot about that need for communication and softer skills, that interpersonal skills. Would you reinforce that that's something that developers should look at in their kind of progress and development plans?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how else to expand on that.
No, that's fine. So when you start to look at your kind of resourcing model, clearly IT outplacement has played a part of that for you. Talk us through your thinking process that drew you to that as a potential solution for you in meeting your goals.
Well, at the time we had one QA engineer and she was a part-time student. And now I've worked in companies that has no QA at all. And so I was thinking, well, we already have QA and the team had become dependent on having some QA. So I said, okay, let's double down on that and talk to several different companies that were doing QA outsourcing. Devico or Deviqa, as I found them, were specialized in QA. And the people I talked to, Oleg actually, was very knowledgeable of QA systems and test case management and so forth. And I talked to a few people and I was able to talk to individual people and give them individual interviews and select which people that I wanted on my team. And we just basically used Devico as a source of people to hire from. And we treated them as part of the team. They were paid differently, but other than how they were paid, and of course the fact that they were in different parts of the world than us, they were treated very much like part of our team. Unfortunately, they were in Ukraine, as you know, and they were not able to leave the country. At least the men were not able to leave the country once the war started. So, but they kept working. They were great. They kept working through the whole thing. Sometimes even just like telling us about how they can hear the bombs, but they still have internet, so they're still working.
Well,
It's great. Yeah.
if I was asked you to produce a label for me that we could stick on the side of the tin that said, you know what, these are the benefits of IT outsourcing, what would they be for you?
Makes it really easy to get people very fast. Of course, that's the obvious thing. I would even say secondary is the fact that they are cheaper probably for most people, but the best part of it was just that we could get good people very quickly. And they were also under contract, so it's not like we have the long process. If someone isn't working out, we can just say you're not working out and they can go. And it's not easy finding freelancers either, and they're also ridiculously expensive. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds between freelance and outsourcing.
And what about the drawbacks? Somebody said to you, I'm not so sure. What are those for you?
Sometimes companies make decisions outside of your control as a leader, and don't want freelancers or don't want contractors. So that's, I guess, I don't know if that's really a drawback, but I mean, the biggest drawback is probably just that they're still not exactly part of the team. Most of the team members are here in Germany, somewhere elsewhere, but they were primarily in Germany. We also had people in Portugal, and when we had team events, the people in Portugal would come, the people in Germany would come, but the people in Ukraine couldn't come. I don't know if that's because they were in Ukraine. I think that chances are most of them wouldn't have come anyway. They still have a bit of a loyalty to their company, to Devico, and not necessarily to us for good reason. But so missing that loyalty, I guess, is what you could say. I would have happily hired almost all of them. So, but they wouldn't come because they were happy there.
Well, and would you say that loyalty piece, whilst it could go missing, if you've got the right partner, then they will help manage that piece so that their people feel part of your organization?
Yeah, that's true. And for what it's worth, the people that we had loved working for us. They were seemingly very loyal. So, I mean, it's not even that big of a drawback. The whole time that we worked with them, most of them stayed on our project. There were a couple that left mostly because we had a change we had enough front-end engineers we didn't need that supplemented anymore. So that was also a bit hard because we had to let them go. I mean, they're not fired because they still work for Devico, but we had to sort of tell them that we didn't need them. And then we also had a couple people leave of their own accord because they had found other jobs somewhere else. But generally, my experience with outsourcing, usually turnover is much worse. I've worked with Indian companies where the turnover rate is ridiculous and people are coming in, they get some experience and then they leave. But this experience with Devico in Ukraine was good. And I've actually had a while ago, about, 10 years ago, 13 years ago, I was the head of engineering at a company doing augmented reality in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And we had a team also in Ukraine, and they were also great and completely loyal with a different outsourcing company. But that was a good experience.
Thank you. And you've alluded to a few examples before, but I wondered if you could just talk us through a specific example. You thought, yeah, I'm glad I had outsourcing linked to that, and that really helped with that particular solution or challenge that we had.
Well, our outsourcing was primarily in QA. And at the time when they started, we didn't really have a professional QA. We had, like I said, one part-time QA person. So they came in and they built test cases and they set up test rail for managing the test cases. And they were like machines just cranking out the test cases for us. And then we got in a couple of test automation engineers who helped build some end-to-end tests for us, and even some of the unit tests, because they're also front-end engineers. So So that was really helpful because I think the regular engineers were too busy with feature writing, and product was very insistent that we not divert resources away from writing product code, but we needed to focus on quality. So hiring external people to do testing helped me manage my stakeholder and also make sure that my code was of good quality.
Okay, thank you. Now, I know obviously you chose to work with Devico, and there are lots of people, lots of competitors offering similar services. I'm curious, when you reflect, if I was to say to you, give me some reasons maybe why you chose Devico, and maybe some reasons from other competitors you thought, I didn't want to work with those people, what they might be.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of salespeople who sounded more like salespeople, and Oleg sounded pretty tech knowledgeable, and I appreciated that.
Cool. That's not the first time we've heard that, so thank you for the comment. So how about, there are people out there who still aren't convinced whether or not they should take the jump to look at outsourcing, IT outplacement, whatever reference we use. What advice would you give to those that haven't yet tried it, but are maybe thinking about including it within their model?
I would say to go for a hybrid. I would say to not go full remote, and also to do everything you can to make them feel like part of your team, invite them to your Christmas party and so forth. Like really, that's what I do. And as far as recommending Devico, I have already to one of my friends who's doing a startup right now and needs some people. I don't know what the state of that is, but I would recommend